Okay, so I'm going to do the last layer of skin tone. As you can see, if I grab this baby, her skin is still kind of pale for her size. So I'm going to give her a red wash, or it's kind of a mauve wash. And here's my red paint that I've been using for other things, with the modeling and stuff. So I'm going to take some paint from the top with one of my wash sponges. And get these guys out of the way for a minute so you can see. Swirl my paint and dip. And start at the back. If it's too thick, this will go on very, very red, which is okay if you're doing a preemie. Sometimes it's better to put the red on rather thick if you're doing a preemie so you don't have 10 layers of red. The paint sits better when it goes on a little bit thicker than it does when you have tons and tons of layers. So you can see that that's going on warm, and that's what we're after, is a subtle, warm look. And it sucks in more on the top of the head than it does everywhere else. I found a couple little paint blobs in my jar, so I want to make sure those are mixed up so they don't end up on my baby's face. I do not apply washes on top of unbaked layers because it smears the paint and kind of takes away the modeling effect. And a little bit of modeling is good. I don't want my babies so modeled that they look unrealistic, but I put on those last few layers of modeling thinly enough that they blend together and create a nice subtle modeling layers. I think this is about perfect for where I want her skin tones to be before I go on with her final details. She's really coming to life. She's really quite sweet. It's the first time I've made this kit, so it's fun to see her come to life. Even though she's a used kit and I can see the previously used stuff, I'm excited to see how much better she's going to look than she did before. Okay, now we're going to let this dry, and while I do the rest of the pieces, and then we'll cook it. And after it's cooked next, then I will start working on the blushing and details. When it gets to the areas like the bottoms of the feet where there's pooling in between the fingers, then I will pull out my secondary sponge to help absorb some of those red poolings, and my blender sponge is just a touch in there to make sure there's no puddling in the creases. Puddling is kind of a strange thing. It doesn't really, you can't really see it while it's wet. It almost looks kind of nice, almost, because it's giving you a little bit of pink in those creases. But as it dries and you see how thick that pooling turns when there's not the extra liquid on it, then it starts to look kind of gunked up and icky. So pay attention as you're building them to remove the extra puddling as you go, so it doesn't end up with the large amounts of gunk in the creases when they get dried up. that really warmed it up. You can kind of see as it is already that it's a really nice warm color. After we're done with our blushing and details, it'll be perfect for her. Second sponge is just to wick off some of the excess liquid. It does take off a tiny bit of color, but not too much, just to help keep it smooth and dry, or dries evenly. So we've been working on trying to figure out which babies we're going to build up and take to the doll show with us, the Rose Doll Show in July next year. And that's a challenge, to pick just 10 or 15 or 20 kits that you want to do, because I have a lot of kits, and picking which ones to take, it's like picking favorites. How can you pick a favorite when there are so many that are amazing? I don't want too many by all one artist, and I don't want too many all the same size. And last year I made the mistake of not realizing that I had so many snarky faced ones until I got to the show and realized that like 10 out of 15 of my babies are all kind of grumpy. And I didn't really even notice that while I was building them and putting them aside. I just was picking kits that I was in the mood for. So either last year was a grumpy year, or I had no idea why I was picking so many grumpy kits. I have no idea. So this year we're going to make an effort to find babies with a variety of facial expressions, happy and sad and sleepy and awake and everything else in between, to showcase all the different sorts of kits out there and not just one feel, I guess, of kits. And some people really love toddlers, and some people really only love the tiny ones, and some people really only collect minis, and it's hard to know what to do to make everybody have something to look at. Let's see, I have a tiny bit of red paint that didn't dissolve in the paint jar, and I don't want it to sit there and be a little scratch or a nick, so I have to get that off. In the olden days, kits used to come out with, the doll kits came standardized by the time I started. Before that I started, they came with smaller limbs, but when I started, it was traditional for a doll kit to have 3/4 limbs, which is like this, where they would be 3/4 on the arms. They have little cap sleeves on it. Nowadays, it's more common to have the full arms, and a lot of people don't like the babies with the 3/4 arms, but that leaves a lot of really amazingly detailed older kits that have 3/4 arms that turn people off because of those arm caps. They can't wear as many clothes. Realistically, they have to have a onesie or something underneath to hide the shoulder caps. And then a long time ago, they would have kits that came out with only 1/4 arms, which was like cut off right above the wrist, like the dolls that you could get at the doll store, or like Walmart type of stores. And those kind of died away, and now they're making a comeback because of how cuddly they are. It's kind of strange how things kind of repeat themselves occasionally. This is one of those older kits that was brought out as a 3/4 limbed baby, so it's not a very common kit these days because of the arms. And I keep wondering if it would be monetarily beneficial for the open stock kits to be remolded with full arms instead of 3/4, but knowing how much it costs to mold things, I'm guessing that's an impossibility. Okay, this baby is done with her painting, and now she just needs to dry and cook. And I have a convection oven that I used to cook her in, and in my convection oven it only goes in 25-degree increments. So I have done some trial and error methods on what it takes to set the paint on my oven, and it seems to be, in my oven's case, I think that Genesis suggests to cook it at 265 degrees for 9 minutes, but my oven can't get to 265 degrees. It goes to 250 and it goes to 275, but nowhere in between. So I operate on the caution side of things, and I have put them in for 250, and then I have to figure out how long to cook them in order to set the paint. So my oven, I cook them at 250 for 12 minutes if the oven is cold, not used or preheated from somebody else's cooking, or 11 minutes if it's warm from somebody else. And then there's always the Q-tip test that you can do on the babies to see if the heat is set, where you get the Q-tip wet with water and then rub at the back of the neck after it comes out, and that'll tell you if the paint is set or if it'll wipe right off. Okay, so that's it for this video. I will come back when she's cooked and cooled and ready to start her details and veining, or not veining, just details and blushing. See you in a bit.